Joining me here today, it is, of course, the legend, Michael Bisping, UFC Hall of Famer, former UFC champion, has this incredible documentary coming out on March 22nd. What's going on, sir? How are you?
I am very well. Thank you very much. Yeah, very excited. The documentary has been long in the making. I think it was 2018 we started working on this. So a lot of people have been hassling me for a long time saying, Mike, what is going on with this documentary? Well, it's going to be worth the wait. It is finally here. And yeah, I'm excited for the world to see it.
It's cool seeing all the people that are participating too. We're seeing some classic ones, Joe Rogan, Helwani, but then you see like Vin Diesel, Mickey Rourke. But the one that really had me jump out of my seat was Luke Rockhold. I was looking at it like, I cannot wait to see how Luke Rockhold talks about it. Just that whole rivalry. I loved it.
Yeah, actually, we were very lucky, and fair play to Luke Rockhold and everyone that spoke on it. As you said, there's a lot of actors, there's a lot of MMA talent. There is Vin Diesel, Mickey Rourke, Scott Adkins, Michael Shaw White. The list goes on. Yeah, it's pretty special. But Luke Rockhold, he started training at the Ruka Training Center where I train. Where I used to train. I'm not in there every day anymore. And they were down there filming Jason Perillo. And they said, hey, do you think there's any chance Luke will come on? And he very, very kindly agreed. So shout out to Luke for that one.
What did you think of the internet's reaction? You guys made a video. I don't know if you were sparring or you're just working together, and everyone just blew up like, oh my God, it's 2016 again. They're friends. What's going on? What's the relationship? Are you guys friends?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say we're friends. We don't exchange messages and things like that. But come on, it's all water under the bridge. I'm a grown man. Me and Luke were rivals at the time. We're no longer rivals. I'm a retired fighter. He's still doing his thing. And I always said Daniel Cormier is one of the best human beings you'll meet. For Daniel Cormier to have a great relationship with Luke, he can't be bad. I'm sure if I meet him under different circumstances, we would have been fine. So, yeah, Luke's a great guy. Wish him all the best.
So you mentioned documentary, started talking about it 2018. I want to ask you, the fight with Luke Rockhold 2016, if you had not said yes to that fight on short notice, do you think we're sitting here talking about a documentary?
Possibly not, but I didn't say yes to a fight. I asked for the fight. Fair enough. That's why Vin Diesel's in the movie as well, because I was in Toronto filming Triple X, and you know the story. Weidman got injured, so I messaged Dana, and honestly, I didn't think Dana would say yes. And in fact, he didn't say yes. He said, Mike, we love you, but Jacare's our first option, but I thought I didn't think I'd get it anyway, but I thought at least if I show, listen, I'm willing to step up. I want a title fight. I'm sending a message, and maybe I'll be the next one in line. So yeah, when he said Jacare, I went out and we went and watched a baseball game at my friend's house, had a few beers, had a bit of a late night. And then the next morning I find out the blue, lo and behold, I was fighting for the belt in 2 weeks. And I still had to finish filming the movie. I still had obligations. So it was a bit of a rush job, but all worked out in the end.
What was the emotion like in the build-up? Because I say build-up, 2 weeks. Obviously, training camp, you're trying to do everything you can. I'm sure weight's a huge focus. But Luke Rockhold, you guys have a little history. You guys have a back and forth. What was it like preparing for that fight?
Yeah, I mean, you'll see it in the documentary. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, listen, when you've only got 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks, there's no time for any pressure to build. And often for mixed martial artists, when they're training for a fight, that is one of the main things. It's pressure, because you want to win the fight for obvious reasons, because losing sucks in many ways, not just physically, but mentally, in terms of your career trajectory, in terms of your financial compensation. There's many reasons. And of course, in this occasion, you get to be champion of the world if you win. So, there was a lot at stake, but I was very grateful to have a great team around me.
My favorite press conference of all time has to be the UFC 199 post-fight press conference. I think that's probably the greatest I've ever watched. Talk to me about that, because you showed up, I believe you had the bucket of beers. There are already some used ones in there. What was your mindset going into that press conference? Because
I had one beer, a Bud Light, a Coors Light or something. It wasn't exactly a bottle of whiskey. Come on, man. If you ever win the World Championship, you're entitled to have a beer. And then when I walked into the press conference, Luke was actually talking about how he's going to destroy me in the next fight and I'm not worth it. So I was like, okay. Well, we'll have a bit of fun at his expense here.
But it seemed like you guys had a lot of fun at his expense. Even during the fight, like in the cage, I remember you went to shake his hand. He was not shaking your hand. And everybody's like, do you know where you are? Like, how come this wasn't a situation where, you see a lot of guys shake hands, but with you guys, it just didn't happen?
Well, no, I tried to. See, what a lot of people don't realize, I won the fight and then I was doing a victory lap around the ring, if you will, waving at the crowd and stuff like that. And I found myself walking past Luke, and I put my hand out and shook his hand, and he shook my hand. And then obviously I've just won the world championship, so I'm very excited. So I did another lap. I was celebrating a lot. And the next time I went past Luke, again, I went to, one more time to say, hey, good fight, whatever. And he was like, I already shook your hand. And I'm like, what? He's like, I already shook your hand. I said, oh, really? You want to be like that? He said, yeah, I shook your hand. I'm not doing it twice. So that's when I was like, all right, okay. Here we go.
Do you enjoy when people talk about that knockout? As a lot of people, they say, like, when they've watched a fight live, that has to be one of the most shocking moments. The right to the stomach, the left over the shoulder. What do you feel when people tell you that's one of the most shocking things they've ever seen?
Well, it's kind of a backhanded compliment, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It is what it is. Listen, it was a great fight. It was fantastic.
When you look back at your career, man, is it kind of weird to look? It feels like it's in two parts, right? You have a point where you're sort of the villain, and then people are enjoying the fact that they hate you. All of a sudden, you become champion. You finish your career on a high note and everything. Is it kind of weird? How do you sort of look back on your career, considering how different all the chapters are?
Nah, with fondness. It was great. I wouldn't change a thing.
All right, so I want to get to that fight with Rashad Evans, because I know that was early on in your career. I believe that was your first professional loss. How frustrating was that moment, looking back at that fight?
Well, obviously, anytime you go into a fight, you don't want to, the objection isn't to lose, and I was undefeated at that time, and I lost to Rashad, and it was a valuable learning curve. They always say you learn more from your losses than you do your victories. And of course, so I lost to Rashad. It was a close fight, but, he edged it out with the wrestling. And I thought, right, what can I do? What can I change? Because you don't want to, develop a habit of losing fights. That's the last thing you want to do, so you got to be honest with yourself and have some self-reflection. And one of the things that stood out was that on the day of the weigh-ins, he was in the sauna, killing himself, dehydrating himself 20 pounds. And I was sitting in a Chinese restaurant eating noodles and drinking 7-Up. And I'm like, I'm not really making all the sacrifices I could be, so because making 205 at that time for me, there was no weight cut. As I say, I was eating noodles on the day of the weigh-in. So I thought, right, time to go down to 185. And as I say, in every loss that you have along the way, and for me, there was a few certainly throughout my career, you learn, and you've maybe in your preparation, maybe it's the weight cut, maybe it's your diet, maybe it's your coaches or your training partners, but every time you learn as you go along.
What I love about looking back at people's careers when they finally retired is that they can sort of take that step back and see what moments they regret, what moments they're proud of. I want to start with your regret. Do you have like a big regret in your career, a fight you regret taking or stuff like that? I think people would assume Vitor because of the eye stuff, but what's kind of, your biggest regret on your career?
Nah, no. I don't regret taking any of the fights, even the Vitor one, which did ultimately cost me an eyeball. You can't live your life like that. I went into that fight knowing that there's a good possibility that he was a steroid. Well, I knew he was a steroid cheat. He has a long history of that stuff, but still as a fighter, I was willing to roll that dice. I still thought that I could beat him, so yeah, no regrets. I mean, you can't live your life like that. I mean, it all worked out in the end. And in many ways it made my story more impressive. And as I say, so a lot of people try to point blame, I guess the only blame could be with Vitor. People try and point to the UFC, they try and point to things. It's like, no, I knew what I was getting myself into. It's a vicious business stepping into the octagon, almost naked in your underpants with 4-ounce gloves on. You know what I mean? Things can go wrong. I know what I'm signing up for. All the fighters should know what they sign up for. Yes, Vitor's a cheating scumbag that has no honor. Let's be honest. If you're taking steroids in a sport like this, then shame on you. We're not trying to put a ball in the back of a net. We're not trying to put a ball in a basket. We're trying to knock somebody unconscious or render them to the point where they will submit. So if he's doing that, then that's on him. But I certainly have no regrets.
So with that being said, what's the proudest moment of your career? Because I feel like you have so many good ones to choose from. Is there one in particular where, for Michael Bisping, not for the fans, not for your family, but for yourself, which one are you most proud of?
No, thank you, Lucas. I appreciate that. Let me see. I don't know. I mean, I don't really always sit here and, applaud myself and pat myself on the back. But for me, listen, winning the belt, it's hard to top that. A personal one for me was beating Anderson Silva. I always wanted to fight Anderson when he was the long-time champion. And he'd only lost to Chris Weidman when I fought him. So he was still very much on form. And that moment in time, for me, I kind of thought, well, I'm not going to get to fight for the belt at my age. It hasn't happened yet. So I looked at Anderson Silva as a my title fight, and he meant a lot to me to fight him and to beat him. And in London as well, at the O2 Arena, such an iconic venue. So for me, that was a very proud moment. But then the next fight, I became champion. That was a proud moment. And then one after that, I defended the belt in Manchester. And that was always a dream to bring the belt back to England as well. So yeah, there's a few.
Talk to me about that 5th round with Anderson Silva, because obviously you take the big knee, the mouth guards out of the mouth and everything. A lot of people figured you were done. You come back, you beat him in the 5th round. I mean, I believe everybody scored it for yourself, or at least the people that watched the fight correctly. What's going into your mind heading into that 5th round? Because a lot of people, that's the moment where they decide, like, either you're a fighter or you're not.
Yeah, no, just to give you a little correction, it was the 4th round. So he dropped me in the 3rd. 4th round, I went out. Right. 5th round, if I'm honest, I'd give that to Anderson, So he got me with some good ones in the 5th. God bless him. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, because I was talking about my mouthpiece to Herb Dean. Yeah. My mouthpiece came out, my gum shield for English. And it came out, and contrary to all the British stereotypes, my teeth aren't that bad. I mean, they're all fake, but whatever. I want to hang on to them, So I'm backing up, and I'm like, Herb, my mouthpiece, and I'm looking that way, and as I look back this way, Anderson's in the middle of the air, hits me with a massive flying knee. I went down, and as I hit the deck, the round ends, right? So Herb Dean jumps in. So I think Anderson, to give him, the benefit of the doubt, he thought, as he steps in, he thought, oh, he stopped the fight. I've won. So he's celebrating. He's jumping on top of the cage and stuff. And I'm looking down on the floor in a crumpled mess, covered in blood. And I look up, and I said to Herb, I'm not out. He says, I know, fight's still on. And I'm like, okay. So I slowly get up, and I've got blood pouring out my face everywhere. And I don't really know what happened in that 60 seconds. It's all a little blurry, if I'm honest. But listen, I was here to win a fight, and the fight wasn't over. So what do? You fight on. Simple as that, And yeah, fortunately, I was able to win the 4th, but I was just on instinct right there, and I didn't know what day of the week it was.
Was it difficult not to be mad at Herb in that moment? Because you imagine, like, look, man, I'm trying to get your attention and stuff. You let this thing happen. Were you kind of mad at Herb? If obviously you said you weren't quite all there, but.
Yeah, nah, I mean, I make jokes because obviously I commentate the UFC now. So obviously mouthpieces coming out is, it's kind of a common thing here and there, and the referee stops the fight. And I always make a little joke, a little dig at Herb Dean, but it's literally just a joke. I'm like, oh, where's Herb Dean when you need him, or whatever. I say something stupid. But no, the reality is, no, I'm not. We are responsible for ourselves. When you're in the octagon and you're fighting, it's not up to you to be turning around and dialoguing with the referee when you've got a world-class opponent trying to knock you out. The referee needs to make those calls. So yeah, it was a momentary lack of focus for a good reason, mind you, on my behalf.
So I want to get to the end of your career a little bit, because it felt like things went very fast, right? You had the fight obviously with GSP. 3 weeks later, you're fighting in China. Everything kind of goes fast. Do you sort of look at that end of your career like, man, I think a lot of people would have liked to have seen you, maybe headline a show in Manchester one last time. Is there you sort of look back a little bit, on the end of your career? How do you look at that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we go into depth in the documentary about that. I was a champ. I defended it. I had a huge mega fight against George St. Pierre, and I lost the belt. And I was pretty much going to retire at that point. Obviously, I had a damaged eye for a long time. And my wife even said when I won the belt, she goes, right, you're going to retire now? I'm like, you're out of your goddamn mind. I've just won the belt. There's no way I'm retiring now. I'm going to defend it. And I lost to George. I was like, okay, well, now that's that. But then Anderson Silva tested positive again for steroids. And they needed an opponent. So I think it was again on 2 weeks' notice. I jumped on a plane. I just lost to George. I've been choked out unconscious. I had no business being there. But I was like, you know what? I don't want to end on a loss. And I've just done a training camp, so I'm still in shape. So I went to win. I did. I didn't go for a payday, although that's nice. You know what I mean? That was another, let's be honest, another payday is very welcome if I can jump in, and I have no problem fighting people. And I went to win, but Kelvin got me. I had no business being there. I remember I did my weight cut, and I'd done a lot of weight cuts. I did one just recently for the George fight, and then all the dieting and all the training, and I was overtrained and stuff. I remember seeing myself in the mirror, and I was so skinny and emaciated, and I just thought, wow. Look at the state of me. What have I done to myself? And yeah, I got clipped. Good for him. But as I say again, you can't live in regrets. I gave that one to Kelvin. I know I did. I could beat that guy all day. But hey, I made that decision. You got to live with it.
All right, one last question for you. It's a super easy one, super obvious one. Why should people tune in and watch this documentary when it comes out March 22nd?
Well, I mean, that's not really for me to say, but a lot of people have seen it already because it released in Canada for a while. And I get a tremendous amount of messages saying how it's inspired them so much and things like that, because, you know, my refusal to quit, this person keeps calling. Sorry about that. My refusal to quit. And they said it inspired them in their own struggles and their own journey. But I think there's something for everyone in there. You know, it's just a kind of a message that anyone, you know, if you're willing to get off your backside and do the hard work, you can turn things around, because I was going nowhere in my life, and we go into detail about that. And when I was at my lowest points, and, you know, sadly, you know, I spent some time in prison and stuff, and I was like, wow, what am I doing? And then ended up being champion of the world and working on TV and living a decent life, you know, and all the way through it, dealing with a lot of injuries and losing an eye and things like that. So it's not just about mixed martial arts. It's not just about fighting. It's about fighting through adversity more than anything. And I think a lot of people appreciate that aspect.
All right, well, there we go. We look forward to it. Thank you so much for the time, Michael. Believe you me, Michael Bisping. I really do appreciate the time, and we look forward to
there we go. Believe You Me podcast and my YouTube channel as well. Make sure you check it out and subscribe. Lucas, pleasure talking to you.